Okay, a nice document drop from the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Homeland Security, which is something I'm sure you never thought would be associated with the conversation about the PGA Tour. What did you learn yesterday? Anything new, Kevin?
Well, I think we learned that both sides, particularly LIV, wanted a lot of things and asked for kind of some pie-in-the-sky requests that not even the PGA Tour could ever possibly meet, like giving Yasser Al-Rumayyan a green jacket to be a member of Augusta National. That's, I can tell you right now, I think with full confidence that is extremely unlikely to happen, nor could the PGA Tour grant that if it wanted. So things like that, that they wanted Tiger and Rory to play in 10 LIV events, that they wanted to have this sort of international showcase of golf, that they resisted any sort of control over the PGA Tour determining the fate of LIV. The PGA Tour obviously tried several times to push back on it. And mostly what we learned was that they're still figuring out how this agreement is going to look going forward. I mean, I think for as much as there was sort of bluster in the hearing that went on, the real juice was sort of in the documents. And ultimately, I think what we can sort of say is that the only things that have been truly agreed upon right now are that they're going to drop litigation against each other and that they're not going to sort of try to steal away players that live for the moment. That's all that we can say definitively. The rest of it, as they say, is still to be determined.
Yes, a lot of bluster, obviously, as there always is in Capitol Hill hearings. And, it's not news, as you would know, Kevin, I'm sure, that when there's a negotiation in anything, if you have a paper trail of asks released, some of these YOLO moments will definitely jump out at you no matter what. But the question I'm wondering about is a side agreement. Is there a side agreement to the agreement that is only an agreement to agree, as Jimmy Dunn said yesterday, that says Greg Norman is out? What is that one all about, Kevin?
So it seemed very much like the people involved were sort of confusing what this part of the proposal was, the best of both worlds, with like side agreements. I'd say it's unlikely that Greg Norman has a position similar to what he has going forward. Part of what sort of was discussed in the documents was the PGA Tour wanted to push Norman out and basically said, he could be just sort of moved into an advisory role. The PIF pushed back against that, so they're not going to really agree to that. And then during the hearing, they were sort of asked, what role will Norman have essentially? And, they said, well, Ron Price said, they were thinking we're going to basically phase that position out. So I don't know that if I were Greg Norman, I would certainly be worried about what the sort of loyalty is to him going forward. But I think the fairness to Greg Norman, you have to say that the PIF and LIV hasn't sort of agreed to throw him under the bus and basically be like, all right, well, we'll get you out to sort of get whatever we want at this moment. That was certainly something the PGA Tour wants and will probably still pursue. But as of right now, that is not to say that there's like an agreement between them to kick him out.
Okay, so then what is there an agreement on? Kevin Van Valkenburg of No Laying Up here on the Rich Eisen Show, my colleague from ESPN back in the day. So let's talk about this a little bit, Kevin. Because I was stunned to see that this is a quote directly from Jimmy Dunn, who was involved in these negotiations, high level, nonstop, back and forth. There is no quote. There is no merger. There is no deal. There is simply an agreement to try to get an agreement. So what is there between the PGA Tour and LIV Tours right now, Kevin?
I think what you could say is there's an understanding that the Saudis were determined to potentially dump another $5 billion into LIV and to sort of essentially get a seat at the table. I think the best description that I've sort of heard about this is if you decided, Rich, that you wanted to be involved in professional football, would you rather start your own professional football league, or would you rather just buy a professional football team within the NFL? That's ultimately what I think the Saudis decided, which was, it's been fine, like trying to start up this whole deal. And like, obviously we have some ideas that we think would benefit, probably based off of some of the Formula One model or the cricket model. But ultimately, like, if we could just buy our own kind of portion of this, that would be a much better fit for us and probably less of a headache. And so I think what both sides have agreed to is that the Saudis were not going to quit easily. I do think that the PGA Tour probably painted itself a little bit in sort of like its financial situation a little more dire than it truly is, just because they know, like, if this doesn't go through, they're in a lot of trouble, that they're kind of screwed. So I think that, they've all kind of agreed on that it would be best if they worked together. And, that seemed to be, Senator Johnson's from Wisconsin, his sort of feelings of like, why don't we just let these guys figure this out? Like, let's let them kind of sort it out. We don't need the government sort of in there. And Senator Blumenthal was basically, he's been a pretty consistent critic on Saudi influence stuff. He's been one of the, senators who can't really you don't play the what about game with him, because he's sort of been outspoken of, we shouldn't be selling arms to the Saudis. Like, we shouldn't be involved in letting them have as much influence in our society about basic things. So that's what I would say the main takeaways are, is that they want to kind of figure this out and they want to play nice, because they're realizing Yasser doesn't want to get deposed and the PGA Tour doesn't want to be bled dry in further like legal disputes or pouring an extra $5 billion into the future of LIV.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.